Hi, I'm Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to show you how to do a pattern that's on the Miyuki website that's featuring their Tila beads. This is a multi-step process, so you're going to be making different pieces of components and then adding them together. I've already made the first component, which is made with the Tila beads, size 11 seed beads, as well as 3mm glass pearls. To do this, all I did was string 12 of the Tila beads with seed beads in between each and tied it into a circle. I then took another piece of thread and on the top here sewed through the Tilas and added a pearl after each. Now what I'm doing is making other components that are going to sit on top of this ring. These are made with the Tila beads and 3mm check glass beads, as well as the 11 beads in the middle. So I'm going to show you how to do these little beads, and again you have to make 6 of them. So I have 2 made and I'll be making more. To start out, I have 2 needles that are on my thread. I pick up one of the Tila beads and let that go down to the bottom of my thread. I pick up one of my check glass fire polished rounds on each needle and let them go down next to the Tila bead. I could be using seed beads for this section. I could be using metal beads. It's up to you. Anything larger than a 3mm is not going to sit well though. I then put on my seed bead and I'm crossing my thread through the seed bead, so one needle is going from left to right and one from right to left, and pulling it tight. Next I'm going to add another check glass bead on each needle, one on the left, one on the right, and drop them down next to my seed bead. What that forms is a little X. To get the X to lay over top of the Tila bead, I'm going to go through the next hole of the Tila, one needle going from right to left, and then the other needle going from left to right. And I'm going to pull those through, so that way that little flower pattern or X pattern sits right on top of my Tila bead. Pull it tight, and then to tie this off, all I do is take one thread. This one I'm on the right hand side, and I go through the bottom loop of the Tila, and I'm just trying to get my needles on the same side of the thread. I'm going to tie a square knot right over left and then left over right, and what that's going to do is hold the thread in place, and then I'm going to take my needle, one of them, it doesn't matter which one, right or left, so I have my square knot there. And I take my needle here, and I go through whichever side the knot is closest to. So I'm going to go through that section of the Tila bead. And what that's going to do then is pull the knot so that it ends up inside the Tila bead. And then I'm going to cut off my threads. And again, I have to make 6 of these little pieces. Now that I've done with my 6 pieces of my flowered Tila beads, I've sewn them into a circle in the same fashion that I've done here. I started with one piece of thread, and I sewed empty Tilas next to my flowered Tilas in a pattern of 6 and 6. In between each Tila bead, I've added an 11-0 seed bead, and then I tied them in a circle. When I came to the end of my circle, after I did my square knot, I took my thread from the bottom loop of the bottom hole of one Tila to the top, and now what I'm going to do is sew the 2 together. So I'm going to be laying one loop, one of the rings right on top of the other ring. It's just a little tricky to get your Tilas to stay in place. They'll move as you make it. But what I'm going to be doing is sewing through the top of the Tilas and adding these together by sewing through my 3mm bead that's on the first row, which is my pearls. And I'm going to sew through my pearls. So I'm sewing from the last row with the flowers through the pearl and then through the top of the next Tila bead in line, which is a Tila bead with a flower on it. And that's going to start pulling them together. So again, I sew through my 3mm pearl on the bottom Tila loop, and then I sew through the empty Tila hole on the top Tila loop. And continue along again through the pearl of the bottom, and then through the top hole of the next Tila bead in line on the top ring. And this is going to continue the whole way along the loop. Now I'm going to make the bail of my pendant. So here's my pendant loop, and what I've done is I've added another piece of thread and 2 needles onto each end of my thread. To add the bail, I'm going to be adding a pearl on each needle. And this just makes a little decorative bail. And I've come out of the one with the flower. Then I add a Tila bead on each of my threads, 1 on each side. And what I'm going to do to pull these together is actually take the needle that's through the Tila on the left, and I'm going to go through the same hole that the Tila is on the left and pull the needle down, and then go back through that same hole. So I'm just doing a loop on each side. So I've done that on the left, and I'm going to do that on the right as well. So I'm going from the right Tila down the left Tila, and then back up the Tila that's on the right. So I've just made 2 circles, 1 with each needle. And that holds the Tilas in place on the side. So I'm just going to give it a nice little tug, kind of pull it down into place. And that's going to have them sit right on the side just to make a little added decoration. And then what I'm going to be doing is adding 1 bead on each side of my needle. And I'm using, just for decoration again, my 3mm check glass beads. And then I'm going to go through my pearl glass bead in a crisscross fashion. So I'm going right needle to the left and left needle through to the right. So the pearl is going to have 2 threads through it. And that's going to form a little triangle. Now I'm going to add my seed beads to go through my bail. So I'm going to add 2 seed beads on each needle and let them drop down next to my pearl bead. And then in the same crisscross fashion that I did the pearl, I'm going to do a seed bead. And I'm going to repeat this step 3 to 4 times, depending on what size you want the bail to be. So the needle for the 3rd seed bead that you put on goes through in opposite directions, and it creates a formula, or creates a triangle as well. So I'm going to continue that, adding 2 beads on each needle, and then adding 1 bead that you cross the needles through in opposite directions. Now that I've added all of my seed beads, I'm going to round my bail out by going back through the glass pearl. And I'm going, the needle that was on the right is going from the right to the left side of the pearl, and the needle that was on the left is going through the pearl, and then to the right side. Just be careful if you do this with a natural pearl rather than a glass pearl, because you may not be able to get your threads through multiple times. And what that's going to do is round out my bail, so when I wear the pendant, I can wear it and have it go through either a cording or something. And then all I'm going to do is take my thread, sew back through a little bit, and tie off my threads on the side.